Hey guys, I'm Will from Tested.
And I'm Norm from Tested.
Norman Chan.
I've been using Android phones.
You have converted. You're an enthusiast now.
Yes, I've given iOS the big middle finger.
Except for the iPad.
Except for the iPad, which I still love.
Yeah.
But in terms of phones, I've converted. And this was the phone that did it. This phone right here.
That's the HTC One.
Yes, the HTC One.
It was the only one you needed.
Well, there are now two ones.
There's three ones. Because what about the One X? Is that like the secret project
and
one?
And the One Max?
With the sword arms?
Yes.
Does it have claws?
No claws.
Okay, this is the one, you bought this last year. This is the Google Play Edition one. So it's no manufacturer bullshit. It's just raw dog Android.
For the most part.
Plus a camera.
Plus the camera software. But just this year, HTC, a year later, has announced the HTC One M8 is in parentheses. They're still calling it the HTC One, but that's this phone right here.
So the M8 is just so that we don't have 5 HTC Ones in our phone database.
Yeah, this is the HTC One M8, which is this year's HTC One, HTC's new flagship phone. It's supposed to be the latest and greatest.
It looks a little more brushed metal.
In phone technology, and it is brushed metal. There's several design changes, both in the software and in the hardware, over last year. So I'm gonna walk through my progression of Android phones. So this is last year's HTC One. One of the reasons I loved it was both its design. This aluminum construction was very beautiful, very solidly built. And had this gorgeous 1080p screen. Since this HTC One came out last year, I had switched over to the Nexus 5, which is available now on Google's Play Store. It's been available for a while. And LG makes this phone. This is a $350 phone, off contract, unlocked, and a wonderful phone. I've been using this for the past at least 6 months now.
One of the things you liked about the original HTC One was the kind of surface, how close the screen seemed to the surface. You're not going to be able to see it on camera, I don't think, very well.
If you look at it down here, all these phones in front of me use LCD screens. The HTC ones use what they call a Super LCD screen, Super LCD 3 screen. It's a RGB stripe. The colors are great, and it looks like there's optical bonding. So even at this angle, you can see that the images are really sharp, even when you're viewing off axis.
When you look at it in person, it looks more almost like a magazine or a printed piece of paper rather than a screen that's sunk down into some glass.
Yeah, Nexus 7 or Nexus 5 also does something very similar. I thought the colors on Nexus 5 were a little more washed out than on the HTC One, but it's a larger screen. It's the 5-inch screen. And then the new HTC One, let's get into that. So I'm going to turn on the screen. The power button is a little better design. It's still at the top. It's not flush. So the previous HTC One had this flush power button, which was kind of difficult to press.
You had to kind of dig in there with a fingernail or something.
And some people have put like Sugru or stuff on top to make it easier to press. This one is a little easier to press. Pops up. It's still a Super LCD screen.
The top's round instead of flat on this one. It looks like from here.
Sure, they're both round. It's a more curved.
Like this way though.
Yes. So from a design standpoint, they're both still curved back phones. The new HTC One is definitely a little curvier. If you look at its top silhouette, the old one of the things I liked, had this, it was a little angled right here, angled. I don't know if you can kind of see that.
Like it's like a parallelogram.
Right, so if you look at it from the side, a lot of people would think that this was the full thickness of the phone when it was really closer to a centimeter and go, what is that phone? It looks so thin. But really, of course, it's the same trick that the iPad 1 did.
It's the MacBook Air trick.
Yeah, most of it is the thickness is actually in this curved back right here. With the new HTC One, it doesn't have as much of a straight edge on the side. It's just way more of a curve right here. And it's a little bit of a thicker phone. It's a bigger phone than even last year's HTC One. Now, it's still a 1080p screen, but this time it is a full 5-inch screen. 4.97.
Norm, your phone was upside down.
Very close to 5. The other big difference is that last year's HTC One had physical capacitive buttons. So, or solid capacitive buttons.
They're not physical, but they're built in. They're not part of the screen.
And you had the home button here and the back button here, and the third button you had to actually do something else with, a double tap, I believe.
And that big HTC logo is taking up some really, what I think is pretty valuable real estate.
Which doesn't light up at all.
Yeah.
That's gone. With the new HTC One, it's a lot like the Nexus 7. which has a power button on the side, and it uses your software buttons on the back.
Got it.
Or on the bottom. But the new HTC One still has the HTC logo, and if you compare these three phones, it is the tallest of all three of the phones. It has this big forehead and a really big, I guess you call it a chin on the bottom.
Okay.
Compared to the Nexus 5. Like if
you pull it down some, we can't see. Whoop.
If you compare,
right.
if I line up that, there's that extra space by my pinky on the bottom.
Well, but that's probably extra space for battery and stuff like that. So you should have better battery life with this larger phone.
It is,
right?
and it is a bigger battery. Let's talk about the inside, the guts.
Okay.
So it uses a Qualcomm Snapdragon processor. It's the 801 processor, which is a lot like the 800. It's clocked higher, about 10% higher on the CPU side, about 25% higher on the GPU side, still an Adreno 330. That stuff doesn't matter today. It didn't matter last year.
You're saying we've moved beyond the time in which performance matters for people who want to use their phone for phone stuff.
For high-end Android phones. Okay. The high-end Android phones of last year and the high-end Android phones of this year perform very similarly. Web browsing is extremely fluid. I can load up Chrome right here, and it is extremely, extremely fluid. Some people will still argue that iOS has better response time. If you put an iPhone 5 next to here and put it under high-speed camera, then you might get a little better response.
But you're not. We've moved beyond the time where you swipe and you have to wait for the page to load and there's chunking and stuff like that. Yeah.
It is performance-wise, it's excellent. Games will run. If you do Epic Citadel and load that on here, it'll run perfectly smooth. So really, that's not a deciding factor. Power consumption is the same. What does matter with these phones now are things like the build quality. And the build quality of this phone is very high.
Just to be clear, that always mattered with the phones.
Yes, it does matter.
The screen, the build quality, the radio antennas, the battery life, all that stuff is what matters more than anything on a phone.
And the build quality on this phone is excellent. It's like a near unibody construction. This chromed aluminum, this brushed aluminum finish, I should say, is very beautiful. And a lot of people complain that the Nexus 5 seemed like a relatively flimsy phone. It is. If it's plasticky, and there are merits to that. I'm very now accustomed to the weight of the Nexus 5. It is
being lighter?
It is very light. For a 5-inch phone, it feels very, very light. But and using the HTC One for this month now, it feels heavy.
The thing that I like about the Nexus 5 is that it looks generic. Like it's just a black slab of phone. There's no markings, there's no logos. And it's just a phone.
And it's glass, edge-to-edge glass, very narrow, at least edge bezel. And I felt like with the same size screen on the HTC One, it felt like a heavy piece of equipment.
It's a bigger phone. I mean, it is noticeably bigger when it's in your hand even.
It's 154 grams. The Nexus 5 is 130 grams, if that matters. I mean, 10 grams, 15 grams might not seem like a lot, but you will notice it taking it out of your pocket, and it does bulge more from your pocket.
Yeah.
So that's weight and build quality. Also, something new is that the audio jack is now on the bottom.
I like that. That's a good change.
Yeah, and I think it's good for if you're listening to music in your pocket. If you have the phone in your pocket, it makes a lot of sense because you put the phone top down in your pocket.
Yeah.
But if I'm putting it in my car, for example, and I want to plug in the audio jack and I don't have Bluetooth, and we want to use the audio jack, then you have to put your phone upside down.
Or, okay, yeah. I mean,
so your experience may vary.
Okay.
This version of the HTC One is the T-Mobile version, so it has HTC Sense built in.
Okay. So you have this is your first experience with HTC Sense in a while, right?
In a while, and this is HTC Sense 6.6. It's their 6th variation. We in the past have not liked the Android skins, the default Android skins that OEMs have put on their phones.
But over the last 2 or 3 years, they've gotten less and less pronounced each generation, right? So whereas in the Android 2 days, the Samsung and HTC were basically redoing the entire UI. Now they're just kind of adding stuff here and there to the,
and if you look at the phone, it looks very much like your standard Android KitKat 4.4.2.
It looks like somebody that's put a different launcher on.
Yes. So, like for example, your app tray right here, you can sort by alphabetical. You can sort by most recent, which is nice. And it's vertical. Something new. Exclusive to HTC is that your quick access menu, it's a 2-swipe down. It's very customizable, and there's a lot more than what you would get with your 2-swipe down on on your Nexus, on your Google Play Edition phone, and you can customize this. There's so many options here for your quick access. The biggest difference is that if you swipe all the way to the left on your Google native Google phone, that would take you to Google Now.
That's a great feature.
Which I love.
Yeah.
But if you swipe all the way to the left, what you get is HTC's what they call Blinkfeed, which is their version of a news feed. Now, this is very customizable.
Is it as good as Google Now?
It is not as good as Google Now. I'll straight up tell you, Google Now is still my preferred instant smart. It'll tell you, if I Google location of a restaurant, it'll give me directions to that restaurant.
HTC can't know as much about you as Google does.
But this can tap into, Facebook. It can tap into, RSS feeds from a bunch of websites. You can do Instagram, Twitter, Google+. And so it's like, if you want to have it all in one feed, if you're like a feed information junkie and you just kind of want to get updates from your friends, this is kind of useful, and it is customizable.
It's kind of slow, it looks like.
No, in terms of refreshing, yeah. In terms of downloading images from the feed, it is a little slow. You can still add Google Now as a widget, but obviously it doesn't have that same functionality. You have to tap it to activate the full widget. And you can also get to Google Now by just holding down and swiping up, and that will always take you to Google Now. But I've been so accustomed just to swiping to the left. Again, it's just a force of habit thing. In addition to the Blinkfeed, a lot of the basic apps are HTC specific. Your Messages app is HTC. They have an email app. There is a backup app. There's an app to transfer all your information from an old Android phone to a new Android phone. So
does that work from different vendors as well?
It does. If you have like a, it's most of the things will transfer over.
But doesn't your Google account just sync that as well?
Google account will also do that. But if you have, again, if it's stuff loaded in a specific app, it'll pull that information also. But the biggest change though is the camera experience. And I think in smartphones today, one of the biggest selling points, one of the biggest features you can have that you can sell on your smartphone is the camera experience. I have been very, very unhappy with the camera experience on the Nexus 5, and I kind of dismissed it. I don't even use this for taking pictures, really.
You carry a real camera with you everywhere you go at this point.
I take photos of receipts, and if I need to take notes, I will take a photo with the built-in camera. So this is the native camera UI, and it's the same as on the Google Play Edition. So if you buy the HTC One Play Edition, you'll get this 4.4.2 camera UI, which I don't like. I don't like that you have to hold down to get your this radio menu, for example, for exposure settings. I don't like that. I think it's slow. If I take a picture, I'm going to move this object here. On the Nexus 5, it is slow. See how slow that was for saving a picture? Let's do that again. Snap. 1 second.
So it's your time between shots that's the objection.
Yep. I don't like that. The interface, I think, is really clunky. The camera app on the HTC One, and we'll get to image quality in just a second, I think is fantastic. So we'll activate that right now and show you this camera interface. So I can turn this grid line on.
That's not an option on the default Android camera?
It's not an option. And look at all these menus on the bottom. So I have ISO settings right here. So I can, if I want better image quality, I'll set to a lower ISO. I have exposure compensation with half stops. So on the Google Play one, it's full stops, and it goes all the way down to -2 and +2. So I'll turn this down to a half a stop down, for example. I have white balance changes, settings here. So I can change my crop, my grid lines on geotagging. I mean, Google has a lot of this stuff also.
But it's going to be buried in the settings menu.
And the focus is very fast. So that was autofocus. I can exposure lock and focus lock. And
independently?
It's tied together.
Okay.
And I can take a picture, and there it goes, instantaneous.
So they're not doing a bunch of Windows Chrome nonsense to kind of show you how cool the camera is.
There's also
that gets in the way of you taking more photos.
A dual LED flash, like on the iPhone 5S.
So like a warm and a cool, basically.
So I will take a photo with that. There you go. And I'll show you the picture.
Oh, that's not. I mean, it's weird exposure, but it's not bad.
Yeah. The camera also has. There are also a bunch of different cameras. Now, the back camera here is. You mean
physical? There are a bunch of different physical cameras.
Yeah, there are actually 3 physical cameras on this camera. There's a front camera, which is a 5-megapixel camera for taking selfies.
Hold on, wait. It has a selfie cam.
Most camera phones have a selfie cam, but this one has.
It's not like a crappy 1 megapixel, 1.5 megapixel video conferencing camera.
It is a legit selfie cam, which they actually call it the selfie mode. I'm going to go to the selfie mode right now, and Will, let's take a selfie. Let's frame up to the wide shot, and it says tap to countdown, That's a terrible, terrible picture.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that haunts you.
All right, and
you kind of look like that girl from Reddit. The girlfriend, the weird girlfriend.
There you go. I don't think the image quality for the front camera is that great, but you do have the same settings, configuration settings on the front camera as you would on the rear camera. You have your exposure, you have your HDR, and you have your white balance settings. The rear camera. So this is the camera that most people will be using to take their photos.
Except for selfies.
Except for selfies.
As has been previously established.
Yep. And there are actually two rear cameras. There's this one here and a top one. There's what they call a dual camera.
Is this so you can take pictures while you're taking pictures?
It actually always takes two pictures.
What?
Always takes
one.
Why
would it do that?
You can never access the second picture directly. They call it a depth can. It's a lot like the Kinect. So
it's a stereo camera.
A little bit of a stereo camera.
They've done this. They had a 3D camera before. They've done this before.
HTC had a legit
a Droid Incredible 3D, right?
Yes, for taking stereoscopic images. This is not that.
Okay.
This is for effects. So what I can do is, if I take a photo, actually, you have to turn off flash to enable the effects.
Seems like a good idea.
I can actually, if I block the second camera, it will say the dual camera is blocked, and so I want to make sure my lens is uncovered. Let me block it again. Show you.
Wow.
So that was this block camera right here.
Hey man, your finger's in the way.
So I will unblock it. And if I take a photo, it will actually store some depth information, what it thinks is depth information. So I can actually edit this image.
And does it do this automatically on all your photos?
All your photos.
So it's like a depth map almost.
Almost.
Okay.
You can do what's called this a foregrounder. So I'll tap here, and it will it will kind of assume that that's the foreground, and it will apply effects to the background. So I can, for example, add some blur effects, make the back look like a cartoon. I'm gonna save this image, but actually pull up another image. As I do that, let's run through some photos I took, some test photos I took with the HTC One. It's a 4-megapixel camera, and I thought this is a great example of a photo I took while we're sitting here.
This is a kind of rough situation, too, for a phone camera, because it's really weird lighting. It's something it wouldn't normally expect.
Yeah. I thought the image quality as the photo looked on the phone was fantastic. It's a combination of the image quality of the sensor and also of the screen, because there's a great screen here. Here's another photo I took outside. Now, once I move these photos to my desktop, it's a 4-megapixel camera. They call it an ultra-pixel camera because the physical size of the pixels is 2 micrometers.
They're big, fat pixels.
They're big.
Now, these pictures, a lot of them look a little washed out and kind of.
Yeah, when you move them to the desktop, they're actually pretty grainy.
Okay.
And let's go to the next one. These are photos that are meant to be viewed on phones, not really photos meant to be viewed on desktop.
So you take it, you email it, you look at it on a phone or tablet.
I wouldn't print these photos out. Keep on going. Hey, look, for colors.
Beverages.
And if you zoom in, if I zoomed in on that, it would look very grainy.
So that picture though doesn't look washed out. That's the first one we have seen that doesn't look like it has some sort of weird.
Yeah,
weird
I wanted to
lens
get some
flare
color differentiation, and the color reproduction is pretty good. And to move to the next one, here's an effect. Now this looks like a great photo. There's blurring in the back.
Yeah.
And this
look how weird those beer glasses look.
Yeah, and there's the rim lighting literally on the rim of that glass.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I thought the photo looked fantastic, but there's some post-processing going on.
Wait,
there's some filters going on here.
So is this automatically, or did you do the filters?
I did the filters. So let's switch back here to the camera.
Norman Chan, filter master.
And this is that exact same photo that I showed earlier.
Yeah,
taken
that's
from this
me.
position.
I did the podcast last week or 2 weeks ago.
And on the phone, it looks great.
Yeah, it looks terrific.
I think if you were here and you looked at the photo
so
on the phone,
a little away from the camera, but that's okay.
I will go and edit it. Okay. So I will choose the edit button, and there's this button here called unfocus. So I'll click the unfocus, and it'll process, and now it looks artsy as hell.
Wow, that is crazy bokeh.
It's fake bokeh. I can't actually pinch in, but I can actually tap and say, oh, maybe the background is where I want to be in focus, and now you're out of focus.
Where'd I go? That's amazing.
Because it uses that depth information to guess where the foreground and the background is.
But because the orientation is in a specific way, and one of the cameras is the main camera, and one of the cameras is the depth camera, you kind of want to make sure that the depth camera is on the right side of the phone when you're taking the shot, right?
Yeah, so it doesn't work when you're taking photos of extreme macro images or extreme landscape. It's only for like if you're
portrait
3 to 4
range.
feet. Yeah, portrait range. And there is a parallax effect. So it kind of zoomed in, and there's a 3D effect. And I don't know if you guys can see this.
Super creepy.
It looks like it tries to approximate, and I don't think it does a perfect job.
It does. There's a weird look at the seam where my glasses are, like on the left side of my. What we're seeing is the left side of my face. Like, look at that weird seam there. It's super.
And this
weird.
is purely a novelty. It's not something that you can share with other people who don't have an HTC phone.
Okay.
It's only something you could view on this phone. Or
hey, check this out, man.
Right. You could do your basic editing. You have your.
What kind of power filters do you get as a result of this depth information? You can do the background. Can you remove backgrounds entirely?
You can't remove backgrounds entirely, but you can make it look like it's sketched, like a. And I think the posterized look.
You showed that a little while ago.
Yeah, I'll show you that foregrounder again. Like, for example, the cartoon background was kind of neat.
That's pretty much it. That's the best of this, though, I assume.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like Photoshop filters.
But, I mean, so these are pictures you take and share with friends and stuff, not pictures that you're going to print and blow up on your wall.
If I go back to the camera app, I'll go back to this main menu. There's a Zoe camera, which lets you capture short video clips, but it saves a full-res photo for each frame.
Oh, wow.
That, like 20 frames for a 3-second video or something. And then there's also a dual capture, which I don't know why anyone would use this. You can actually have it inset.
This is so you can capture a reaction to something awesome.
Yes.
Like, aim the camera at me, I'll do something awesome, and you can capture the reaction to that. No, but yeah, your face is going to be in it. You got to get your face in there.
And the cat has a reaction. There you go.
Oh. Ah! Yeah, that's pretty lame.
Yeah.
Is the quality on the stills pretty good with the Zoe camera?
Yeah, the quality of the stills, it's the full 4 megapixel.
Does it track focus and stuff as you move the shot, or does it lose focus if you change
focus.
it? Okay.
Yeah.
So how does this do with panoramas and stuff like that? Other phones do
really
that.
well. The camera app built into the HTC One, I think, is far and away the best Android native panoramic app I've used. I think the one on the Google Play Edition phones sucks.
Okay.
And so you can enable your panoramic, either 360 panoramic or just your horizontal one.
By 360 you mean up like a globe, or
globe.
just so you just kind of
globe.
wave around and it fills in the gaps.
It's really good about that. But you have this horizon line. You can also, of course, take photos in the portrait position, which gives you more vertical resolution. If I start, then I'll just drag, and you can see that following on the bottom.
And it's flashing red when you get going too fast.
Yes, exactly. And if we pull up an example I took last week, this is at Treasure Island, and it's really consistent with its stitching and exposure, and I thought the image quality was fantastic.
That's pretty good. Like the exposure, tracking the exposure, I mean, this is a fairly bright environment across the board. But that looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Again, it still looks a little washed out when you put it on the screen.
Yeah, when you view these photos on your desktop, when you view them on like a Retina iPad, for example, the photos don't look that great, but viewed on the HTC One, which I think is fair. You want to shoot photos that look good on the phone you're going to share them with, and I'm never going to print these out.
Yeah.
In terms of camera phone photos,
they're not. You don't put them on acid-free paper.
Yes, they're not for saving all your memories.
Okay.
And then finally, there's this, which is they call it the dot view case, and this is a separate accessory, $50. And it taps into some of the features that's built into HTC One.
I think this is the coolest part of this phone.
So. HTC, the Sense UI also lets you unlock the phone by, for example, double tapping it.
Is that like, and you can do like tap, 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 tap. Like they have all sorts of neat stuff. Like if you have the phone face down, it doesn't wake up. It doesn't disturb you for calls and all sorts of stuff like that, right?
Right. So, and also if you're in your landscape position, if you're just holding the phone, it's off, and just tap the camera or the volume, it'll go to the camera. Little things like that, that's nice. But the way it's integrated into this dot case makes it even cooler. So I'm going to slide this in. And the phone is pretty big already. So I thought having this attached to it, it's going to be big. Why not make it the biggest?
Now, that doesn't look like a case that's going to do a ton to protect the phone. It doesn't look super thick.
I mean, it's rubbery. It's soft.
Ooh, it is a little rubbery.
It's rubbery. But on the grill here, on the front, there's this dot matrix grill. And there you go. I tapped the phone twice, and you can actually see the time and the weather. Oh. There you go.
Hey, it's cloudy outside. It's 56 degrees Fahrenheit.
I can change the volume.
That's so cool. So there's no lights in this cover. It's just shining through the screen.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Oh, if you open it really fast, you can see.
Yeah, you can see how it fakes that light bright effect. And, for example, if I call Oh, that's the wrong number. If I called this phone using a separate phone.
Okay.
Boop, 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 boop. I love just turning that effect on.
It's really cool.
Yeah, and it's actually really bright. It turns off, doesn't suck up a ton of battery power. But I'm calling this phone with another phone.
It's taking its sweet time.
And of course, it failed.
Here, I'll redial.
It will show you that caller ID information as well as allow you to answer the phone. So if you're driving in your car, you don't have to flip open the cover to answer the phone. So
this is a T-Mobile phone. The one that you tested is a T-Mobile phone. You can also get it in a Google Play edition. Does T-Mobile add anything else that's there you go. Norm Chen's calling.
And I can...
So you swipe up to answer and down to hang up?
And I'm going to swipe down to hang up.
That's probably a good
myself.
idea. That's amazing.
There you go.
I wish it gave little pixel art representations of your portraits.
There's notifications. Now, if you buy the Google Play edition of this phone, you can still buy the dot matrix case, and you can still get these features by downloading the app from the Google Play Store.
Okay.
And HTC has promised that its apps will get updated in the Google Play Store. For example, the Blinkfeed and the Zoe apps will get updated in Google Play in the store, as opposed to having to update the entire phone's software. Battery. It's a 2600 milliamp battery. It's really good.
Okay.
Battery life
like
is
day and a half?
Day and a half easy.
Okay.
There's a power saving mode, which you can activate right here.
What does that do?
And if I turn the power saving mode, you can conserve CPU, display brightness, turn off vibration, and data connection.
So I assume that's I'm at a trade show and I'm going to use my phone a lot today.
The most important thing is turning off that data connection.
Okay.
When the screen is off. That pushes my battery to 2 days full use.
Really?
Yeah. There's an extreme power saving mode that will turn off everything except phone calls, texts, and email, but that's not available for the US phones just yet.
Okay.
Only European phones.
Anything else from T-Mobile? Do they do like Wi-Fi calling and that kind of stuff?
They do Wi-Fi calling, which I didn't like, because if you're at a place where you have a Wi-Fi connection but no internet connection, it'll try to make that Wi-Fi call, and it's very spotty.
Oh, so it's not smart about when it's used?
Exactly.
Okay.
So I turned Wi-Fi calling off. Call quality on T-Mobile is, as you would expect, fairly decent. It's an expensive phone off contract.
How much is it, Norm?
It's you can buy this for $800 or $700 if you buy the Google Play edition, which is twice the cost of this Nexus 5. Now, majority of people are not going to be buying this phone off contract.
No,
they're going to buy it on contract. And if you are on T-Mobile, if you're on Verizon even, because this is a Verizon phone, and you're due for a new Android phone, pay the $200. I think it's a great price on contract. If you're buying phones off contract, you want to put your own SIM card on, the Nexus 5 is still a much better deal, $350. You could buy this, break it, and buy a new one, and you'd still have a phone.
Two for the price of one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The one thing you don't get on Nexus 5, and I forgot to mention this, is that there is also, it's on this side, a micro SD card slot.
Oh.
So you can buy this in 16 gigabytes, 32 gigabytes.
Did you try the micro? Because I had bad experiences with the Android
Video,
micro SD.
photos. I would not install apps on there.
Okay.
KitKat has very specific restrictions on what type of apps you can install, so only for media, but up to 128 gigabytes of SD.
And does the Google Play version of the phone come with the second back cam and all the same stuff that the hardware is the same?
Yes.
Okay.
The hardware is the same for the Google Play edition.
It's
just the software.
It sounds like you like this a lot.
I do, but the thing that's preventing me from switching, aside from the fact that we're sending this back to T-Mobile, is I'm so used to how light this is for a 5-inch phone.
Well, that has a case on. Ooh, wow. Yeah, it feels with the case on, it feels almost twice as heavy as the Nexus 5.
But it's just that difference in weight makes it feel like...
I'm used to dainty little phones.
Even without the case.
It's still a little bit more phone. For me, it's the length. Like, that wouldn't fit in my pants pockets.
Yeah.
So, anyway. That's the new HTC One. What is it, the M8?
They call it the M8. It's available this month. By the time you watch this, it will be available T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, and even off contract.
Everywhere. You can get a Boost.
If you buy a GSM card.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. That'll do it for the HTC One. We'll see you guys next time. I'm Will.
I'm Norm.
Bye.